What's up guys, I'm Mr. Audio, and if you're new to the channel, welcome. This is going to be kind of a beginner's guide to Melodyne. Because Melodyne is kind of a buzzword on the internet right now, Pro Tools now comes with it and it's ARA compatible, Melodyne's kind of a big thing again. And I've been using Melodyne since 2008, so I figured I could do a really good comprehensive beginner's guide to Melodyne Studio 5. Most DAWs are now ARA compatible and work really well with Melodyne. Ableton, the one I use, is actually kind of the last to be ARA compatible. So what's up with that, Ableton? Anyway, I'm going to go over all of the tools in here that I feel are very relevant and that you might use in any case. There's a few tools that I've just never used because I've never had the need to use them. Now, I'm sure that there is a use case where these tools will be relevant, but I've just never needed to use them. Anyway, you're going to want to watch till the end because we're also going to tune and kind of time align a lead vocal track, and it's kind of a poor performance in the second verse, so I can use a lot of the tools that I'm explaining to you. Let's get into it. Alright, so when you open Melodyne, it should look something like this. Now, because I have Ableton and my DAW isn't ARA compatible, I'm going to have to transfer the audio into it. We'll get to that in a second. Let me just draw your attention to a few features Melodyne has first. Alright, so over here, you can record multiple tracks at the same time. So what I like to do is I like to get all of my vocals comped and my breaths kind of manually clip gain down and kind of just time aligned as best as possible without messing with time stretching the vocal, just getting it in the right area, and then I can timeline it in Melodyne. But I do that for the whole vocal production, and then I record all of the audio into Melodyne, and then I tune and time align and make sure it's just perfect. Now sometimes I might bring audio from another instrument to get some chordal information to be able to make harmonies. We'll get to that in a minute as well. But another good thing to do is bringing drums in there so that you can line up your vocals against the drums. Your vocals need to be on the drum beats. Not always on beat, but they have to go with the rhythm of the song. So chances are a lot of your enunciated phrases are going to go with a certain drum hit on your drum rhythm. Now let me just draw your attention to something else. Okay, so let me explain the blobs here, the orange blob and the gray blob. So a gray blob is a track that you can't do anything to. It's just like a guide track. So I like to use the gray blobs as kind of a guide to get my vocal stacks in order. I'm going to show you something to that effect in a minute. So now the orange blobs are the active notes that you're actually working on. So you can move this up and down. Now the reason it's not making any sound when I'm doing that is because I have this track frozen. So editing this track does absolutely nothing to it. This track is frozen. Now, this track is the track we'll be recording on. I have transfer selected up here. Now let me draw your attention to a few info panels that you might find useful. Alright, so this is your track list right here. I always have this visible. And this is your info panel. I don't usually use this, but it gives you some information about your project and the note you have selected. But I kind of leave this off, and here's your harmonics window. I've never used the harmonics and EQ menu because I've never really had to mess with anything. A use case where you might actually need to use it, let's say you recorded an instrument of some sort and it has some really resonant frequencies. You can find those resonant frequencies, and instead of cutting them with an EQ, you can just bring down that harmonic. I'm not sure how that sounds or what it's going to do to the audio, but I am familiar with it. I have messed around with it, but it never does anything good. So I tend to leave it alone. So moving on. All right. So there's a few other menus that I want to go over here too. So up into the edit, you have chords and keys. You can analyze your chords and you can analyze your key of the song. Now this is if you don't know the key of the song. You can just type the key of the song up in here. And then once you know the key of your song, this song is in E major. Now I will show you how to detect the key of the song in a second, and I'll kind of run through it, but it's going to detect it as E major, so it's going to be the same. But I will show you the motions so that you can go through them yourself. So this is also where you can type your key in up here. Now moving on to other things. So here's your time grid. I never have this on when I'm adjusting time. Here's your pitch grid. I always have it key snap. I make sure I have it on the correct key, and sometimes if it's a bluesy song where I have an accidental, I may choose to use chromatic snap for a few seconds. But I'm going to show you a way around that to where you never have to use chromatic snap, and there's a manual way of moving notes around and just placing them where you want. It's very useful, and I find it very helpful when editing vocals from poor performance or someone who's kind of new to singing. Now we're going to go over each tool. So this is your edit mode up here. All right. This is when you want to edit your notes, you should always be in this mode. Now you also have a note assignment tool. Let's look at that for a second. So if we go in here, we can click note assignment tool. You'll notice that it gives you the option, and you can just double click here or up here. It will tell you all of the different octaves right there that you can place this note on. Now, you don't even have to place it on an octave. You can place it pretty much anywhere. It's just telling it that this note is right here. This is a G. So it's still going to sound the same, but you've told it incorrect information, so it's going to do incorrect things. Now, I'm going to go over the algorithms here in a minute, and that's the part that everybody's getting confused about online right now. Really quick. Note assignment mode is very useful for people that have a raspy voice or that are screaming a lot, like specifically pitched screaming. When you have like pitched information and it's just really raspy, it may detect that pitch as an octave lower than it actually is. And then you go into note assignment mode and just double click where you want it to go, or bring the note up there and click and drag it there, and it'll also snap into place. That's really only a case where I've used note assignment mode, because I get a little raspy sometimes in some of my songs. I sing a raspier version of it to go on the sides. I do 2 takes of it. I'll probably do a video on that, how I do rock vocal stacks. But for now, we're going to move on to the next tool, all right? So let's get back into edit mode. This is your select tool. I almost never use these tools here because I zoom with my trackpad here and my mouse. So I never really have it on the arrow. I always have it on one of these tools right here. And these are the tools that I mainly use right here. The ones on top. There's the pitch modulation tool underneath the pitch center tool. It's really the pitch tool now, but it used to be called the pitch center tool. Here's the pitch modulation tool and the pitch drift tool. Now the pitch center tool moves notes up and down and snaps them into place. Now I have active grid on, so it is snapping the note into place. And here's pitch modulation, all right? So this modulates the pitch. So let me explain where your pitch is. Let's zoom in here for a second. All right, so these blobs right here, these orange blobs, they represent the waveform, where Melodyne thinks the note should be based on your pitch. Now your pitch is something entirely different. Let's look. Your pitch is this line right here. So pay attention to the line more than the blobs, all right? Paying attention to the lines will help you out so much more than anything. The blobs are just a representation of the waveform where the average of the pitch is for that duration of time. All right, so moving on to the next tool. Pitch drift is something I never use because it doesn't do much. As you can see, it just kind of drifts the pitch up and down. We're going to undo all of that. All right, so moving on. This is your Formant tool. Now, I'm not going to be able to show you what it sounds like till later on because this track is frozen, but we will definitely be using the Formant tool in this video. You can move the Formant tool up and you can move it down. Moving it down makes your voice sound thick and deep. Moving it up makes it sound, the little higher you go, you can sound like a chipmunk. That's how they make those Alvin and the Chipmunk movies. They just raise the formants up really, really high, and it sounds like this. You know what I mean? Moving on. Your amplitude tool, all right? That just controls the gain of your notes, individual gain of the notes. Now you can select all and raise the amplitude of everything. And then there's also your fade tool underneath this. This you can fade into things. I'm definitely going to show this. There's a spot where I'm going to use the fade tool and it's not going to work, but you're going to see what it does. All right, so you can use this fade tool to fade into your notes. Now let's say you came on a little aggressive and there was just something in the beginning of that phrase you just didn't like. You can try fading into it, maybe soften it up a little bit. Or the next tool is the Sibilance Balance tool. All right. Now this tool just raises and lowers the sibilance of things. All right. Now, what is sibilance? It's the T sounds, the ch sounds, the k, the h. So all your breaths, your T's, your hard consonants, those are your sibilant parts of the track. And this tool helps you control that. You can raise them, you can lower them. I prefer to lower them and use this very sparingly because it sounds very bad if you lower it too much. Now, just lowering all of your track is not the way to go. Just hitting Command A and just selecting everything and just lowering it by a little bit is not the way to de-ess your track. You want to use this sparingly, all right? It will not get you the desired results that you're thinking of. It'll sound weird and metallic in some cases, and some cases it'll just sound like it's super dull and filtered, like it's got a low pass filter on it, like really, really low. You know what I mean? Anyway, moving on. That's the Sibilance tool. Now we're moving on to the Time tool. Now this, you can move your notes, stretch them out, make them longer. You can obviously see that this tool is going to be one of your most used tools, all right? You can create and craft new performances, backup vocals out of this. This is your best tool here. And it's very natural sounding. Like when you extend a note to be a long note and make that long note even longer, it still sounds very natural. Melodyne is the best for this. So moving on to the next Time tool. Now, here's your time handle tool. So you can place a spot on here and move how the word was pronounced. So, and I will show you how this sounds in the video later, so stick around to the end. But basically you can change the pronunciation. Let's say you said a word kind of a little fast because you were rushed. You can fix that, not only with the time tool, but with this time handle tool as well. Now moving on to the next Time tool, it's the Attack Speed tool. Let me show you. All right, so this just kind of edits the attack of the note that you're... I've never actually used this tool, to be honest with you, but I have used it to see what it does, and I just have never found a use case where I might use this. Like maybe on some harmonies where they got like a choir of vocals singing and you want them to come in a little bit slower than the lead vocal, that might be a case where you could use it, but I've just never used it. I would use the fade tool for that instead. All right, so moving on to the next set of tools here. This one only has two, the Note Separator tool. So you can chop notes in half, just like that, and create new interesting notes, or create notes that were supposed to be there. And then you can use this note separation tool to separate out these notes. When you record something into Melodyne, it is one audio performance no matter how much dead space in between it is. So if you want to separate that out, you can use the note separation tool, and I'll show you how to do that right here. Okay, so like I separated this right here, now I have independent control of each of these notes. Now let me undo that. And let me show you what happens here. If I move this way, this note moves to compensate for that. It's all connected unless you use that note separation tool to make it two audio performances. Also, you can record into Melodyne in two separate areas to also have independent control over those as well. So there's some features I haven't shown you yet. And if you stuck around to the end, you were smart because these features are a game changer for you, all right? And the only way to actually explain them is to show you them in action. So let's get into it. Without further ado, let's tune this vocal. All right. So as you can see, I've got the record transfer button on. I'm going to exit this, select my first note, and I'm just going to play the audio all the way through.
Oh, then you see me. Oh, that we could be.
Uh-oh, what happened? Let's take a look. See what happened here? Allow me to explain. See, what happened here is Melodyne detected it with the wrong algorithm. This can happen sometimes when you have a bunch of tracks recording into Melodyne all at once. Now, I'm not sure how ARA-compatible DAWs work, but for Ableton users, this is an absolute nightmare for people who are just getting into Melodyne. All right, so let me show you how to fix this. All right, so when this happens, what you want to do is you want to select every track that you just recorded into Melodyne. Now, we only recorded this one, so I'm going to just hit Command A on this one specific track. Go up to Algorithm, and we're going to set it to Melodic. Just hit Redetect, and it's going to do its magic. There's some interesting things you can do with polyphonic decay algorithms if you recorded like a guitar or a piano into it. You can make some interesting things you can't even play on guitar. Anyway, let's get back into it. So now that we've recorded this performance in here, as you can see, it's fairly decent, but there's some things we need to fix about it. So we're going to select everything first. Now we're going to hit Edit, and we're going to analyze the key. Now, if you sang enough different notes in that key, it will detect the correct key. But if you didn't, and you only sang like 3 notes, you don't have a very good chance of it detecting the correct key, because those 3 notes are in multiple different keys. So make sure you give Melodyne enough melodic or chordal information so that I can tell you what key it's in. Sometimes you might need to do this on another track, like bring some audio from like a piano performance or a guitar into Melodyne. Preferably a guitar that's not distorted, a piano that's clean, or an acoustic guitar, something like that. Something that's very clear to pick up all the pitches that are being played. All right, that being said, now that we know how to detect our key, let's get back to it. All right, so let's analyze our key. Oh, it's in E major, like I said. All right, so now that it's in E major and I have it set to key snap, what I want you to do is I want you to go up here and double click. Now it's snapped all of the notes into the closest note in that key. Now we're going to listen back and see if any of this is good.
All that you see in me.
That U is much too high.
You.
Let's bring it down.
All that you see in me.
All right, so now we need the pitch modulation tool, and we're just going to tighten this vibrato up here. Notice how this line goes up here and this line kind of goes here. We're also going to want to tighten this up to match that line. Now those lines match up and it's going to be a smooth transition. Listen.
All that you see in me.
That sounds nice. All right, so see this? This is your sibilance. So now when Melodyne detects some sibilant part, it puts this weird lines in it.
See.
Now you can take the cursor and drag it over any note, and it will reproduce that sound that is being played at the time. So you can really focus in on the areas you want to edit. Now let's say you recorded multiple vocal tracks and you want to line this vocal up to the previous one that you've just pitch corrected and time aligned. Let's do that now. So down here, follow my cursor down to this little guy right here. It's called the spread unison tracks, all right? So we're going to click on this so we have both of these tracks selected, and then we're going to click that. Now it's separated them out. Now because this is the same performance and there's no real way to tell these tracks apart until I get to a spot that needs some editing. But there's a spot that I didn't fix in the original vocal that we're going to fix right now. All right, so there's this mouth click here. Let's play it.
Oh.
Did you hear it? We're going to cursor over it. It sounds unpleasant. Here, listen again.
Oh.
I don't like that. So we're going to try to fade in. How's that? Let's see if that works.
Oh,
that kind of works, but there's still kind of a click sound, and I don't like that. So let's try something else.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't like that click sound. Now let's try the Sibilance Balance tool. Let's undo that and lower the sibilance of this part.
Oh.
And see that's still there. Now let's actually try that plus the fade tool and see if that takes care of it.
Oh.
I still barely hear it, and I'm a perfectionist, so I can't let this slide. All right, so let's undo that and that. Now we grab this note separator tool. Since there's no breath that I'm trying to save here, I'm just going to move this here. Now, when using the note separator tool and sliding it back, what's going to happen to this note is it's going to join with the previous note because you're telling it that this is part of the other note. Now you can do this and cut it and make it its own note, but we don't need to do that. We can just delete this whole thing here. So now let's listen back.
All that we could be.
Now, I feel like I want to tame this B a little bit too. And let's listen to this breath to see if it's too offending.
Write me.
That breath is perfect.
Write me a song about your.
Listen to this about here. Let's tighten this up a bit.
About your dreams.
And dreams a little bit. Just a tad bit.
Your dreams.
Alright, so now we're going to do this.
Use a simple melody.
Alright, so I can hear some timing issues here. So we're going to go up to options here and make sure that our time grid is not active. Then we're also going to turn on eighth notes. Because of timing issues, as you can see.
Use a simple melody.
This came in way too soon. Let's try it now.
Use a simple melody.
That melody hits too early. Let's see what this sounds like.
Use a simple melody.
Oh, I don't like that.
Melody. Simple melody. Melody. Melody.
Perfect.
Use a simple melody.
There it is. All right. So that's the first verse. Now the second verse has a lot more errors in it, but we did double click it all in, so let's just see what we get.
Call my name.
That name is a little wild at the end there. Let's tame it a little bit. We don't need it to be that wild.
Name.
That's perfect.
I'll come running.
Oof, that's rough. All right, so this is the part where I said we're going to have to manually drop this into place because it's just not going to sit right or sound right if we warp it with the pitch modulation tool. Let me show you. All right, so we're going to put this down to G sharp, but it's still a little sharp. So let's bring this. As you can see, the pitch modulation tool does nothing to help us here. And it just sounds bad when you do that. So, we're going to do just a little bit of that. Now when you grab the pitch center tool and hold option, you can move this manually. So I'm going to center where this pitch is going and kind of average it in the middle of G sharps. Now listen. And right there it sounds perfect. Now, let me show you what Formant Control does. And I'm going to show you a use case for it later, all right? As you can see, you can make you sound like Alvin and the Chipmunks. And that's exactly how they make them sound like that on film. Now with Formant Control, you can also lower Formant Control and make yourself sound kind of like a demon. Now, Formant Control can be very useful in many cases, but a lot of people use it to make their voice sound a little bit thicker. A lot of people use it to make their voice sound thinner. And I personally use it on vocal stacks to separate them and make them sound different from the lead vocal, especially if they're recorded with the same microphone. Now, moving on to the next phrase.
Fall asleep.
Now, we are going to use the Spread Unison tool to line this up. Now, as you can see, I got some lining up to do, but that's okay. So now we need to chop this right here. And I need to
fall asleep. Fall.
Now we're going to switch back to this one and see how I warped the pitch here. So I've got it going straight up into it like that. Let's go back to this one. I've got a lot of work to do with this pitch here, don't I? I think what we're going to have to do is grab the note separator tool, and I'm going to have to call that this note here. Alright, so this is a rare use case where you're actually going to have to use the pitch drift tool. Let me show you what it does. So you want to grab your pitch drift tool, it's below the pitch modulation tool, and you're going to want to drift this kind of up. Alright? You're also going to want to modulate this a little bit to kind of match that. Then we're going to modulate this and see how it sounds.
Fall asleep. Fall asleep.
Let's zoom in and see what I'm missing here.
Fall. Fall. Fall asleep at the wheel. Fall asleep, fall asleep. Fall asleep.
So when you just can't get it to sound right. Now, in this case, I want it to sound like the original that I already had made. And I like to steal from other parts. I'm going to show you some cool tricks today. You're in for a treat. Let's check it out. When you just can't get it to sound right, and these are the same notes in the same production, we're just going to just Control C that shit. Control V that right over that. And then boom.
Fall asleep at the wheel.
And that's how you can steal from other parts of your production.
Tell me how you really feel.
Now, I thought that this sibilance was standing out to me a little bit too much. Let's turn it down.
Tell me how you really feel.
Now let's see what happens when you turn sibilance down too much.
Tell me how.
Kind of sounds like he's saying a P instead of a T now. Alright.
Tell me how you really feel.
Alright, so I wanted to show one more thing, and that's how the time handle can change the pronunciation of what you did in the performance. Let's take a look.
Tell me how you really feel.
Let's use this really as an example here.
Really feel.
As you can see, by just placing it there, moving it there, let's try to...
How you really feel.
I almost like this better. Really feel.
How you really
Really feel.
How you really feel.
Let's listen to it in the context of the phrase.
Tell me how you really feel. Tell me how you really feel. Don't watch
Okay, I like it like that, but I kind of want to shorten the phrase right there.
me how you really feel.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
How you really feel. How you really feel.
Okay, now I want the time handle back. I want to make it like that.
How you really feel.
And as you can see, with just a little tweaking, we've changed the pronunciation of the word really fairly easily. Moving on. All right. And now we have our tuned vocal. I used a lot of the tools, but I want to show you one more thing with Formant. And this is if you just have a good vocal performance, but the tone isn't quite there to sit right in the mix. Let me show you what I did to fix this issue. So originally I had to record this in multiple parts because the note that I'm hitting here is a G sharp 4, which is a very high note for me to sing in my register personally. So we're going to explore what I did to fix this issue, and I'm going to show you how I made this note sound really, really nice. All right, so we're going to shut this Melodyne off. We're going to load up a new one here. Let's transfer this in quick. It's one note. Now, as you can see, that note is right on par. It's right there on pitch, and we're going to look at it. So when you open Melodyne, click on the black blob down here. It's where your performance is. Select everything. As you can see, I'm right on pitch. Let's double click it, and you'll see that almost nothing changes. Just a little bit. Now, as you can see, I got a little high and a little shaky right here because it's high for me to sing. In this case, I wouldn't want to use the pitch modulation tool because listen to how it sounds. That sounds robotic to me, kind of metallic, if you will. So what we're going to do is we're going to use something of an unorthodox method here. All right, so I've chopped it up where they sit nice in their own space, and I'm just going to double click it. And see, now it looks like one nice, naturally fluctuating pitch from my own vocal cords, not artificially made. All right, so now let's listen to this again. All right, let's tighten up that vibrato. All right, now we're going to listen to it in the mix, all right, with this. As you can see, it doesn't quite fit in the mix, and you're not really sure why. It's the tone. It's the tone of the vocal. Here, let me show you what Formant Control can do to fix the tone of a special use case, just like this. All right, so I'm going to select all of this one note, and we're just going to raise the Formant a little bit. Now it makes it sound a little bit like Alvin and the Chipmunks. Let's just look at the one before this. Okay, it's a little bit lower. We're just going to match that, all right? Yeah, that sounds good. Now let's listen to what we just did in the mix. And there you have it, a comprehensive beginner's guide to Melodyne. If you stuck around to the end and you're an Ableton user, there's some free racks with links in the description. Like I said, I got an update coming out on the Vocal Sauce Rack and Vocal Production Suite soon. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Mr. Audio, out.